Hey, welcome back to another podcast. We have a good friend of mine on today. We're excited. Yesi Centeno, welcome here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll give you 30 minutes. We'll see if you're still happy to be here. In the gallery, we got Trevor and Patrick joining as always.
Hello.
In the gallery, yes.
I don't know, Yesi, I don't know if you know this, but you actually have taught me all my dance moves.
Bro,
So-
I'm not surprised.
Do not own that
I don't know.
one, Yesi.
I was
Don't
just
own
going to
that
say,
one.
I don't know if I'm proud or...
Can we cut to a dancing clip now? Do we have anything? No? Okay. All right.
Gosh.
Hey, Yesi, thanks for being here. So we always start out with, we obviously have some ideas, some thoughts we want to talk about, but I want to get to know you a little bit. One of the things that we love about this podcast is the fact that we get to meet people and we want people watching it to get to know who you are. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backdrop? Who is Yesi Centeno? And then we'll kind of pause in a few places and talk about some of the key moments and go from there.
Wow, that's a very broad question.
Yeah, no, just answer the whole thing. So your whole life story, every detail.
Who am I?
All right.
I'm trying to figure it out still. So I'm the youngest of 10. So I have 9 siblings. There was 12 in total in my family. So we grew up pretty tight. Grew up in Mexico.
So you're the baby child?
I am the baby
How
child.
did I not know this? Okay, but that makes a lot of things are making sense right now, but carry on. Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, as a baby child myself, I'm
Okay,
pretty
you know
offended by
what?
that.
My nephew grew up with us too, so he likes to think he's a baby child, but I'm
as
a baby child.
as well, I'm with Yesi on
Are you
this.
guys all baby children in
Yes.
here?
Yes, we are.
There you go.
Well, I'm a middle child and no one knows me, so that's just how middle children are. But okay, carry on. You're saying.
So we grew up in Mexico. Pretty poor actually. I feel like our poverty kind of ended after I was born. Like I was born into really, really bad poverty, but I don't remember because I was obviously an infant. But when I reached 1,
Yes, obviously. When
Yeah,
you
obviously.
were born.
I don't remember.
Yes, he was also small when she was born. Carry
Yes, I almost got eaten by ants when I was little.
on. What?
Yeah, I did actually. There was no lights in our house. We didn't have any hydro. And I was like, I think 2 weeks old. And then my mom left me in the bed to go make dinner. And we had like an infestation of ants. So when she came back, I was like black. So like I almost got eaten by ants.
Oh,
that
snap.
was like, yeah. So we were like, we hit rock bottom when I was born pretty much.
So whereabouts in Mexico?
Zacatecas, right in the middle. Try to say that.
Zacatecas?
Yes.
That was some serious pronunciation too. Okay, right in the middle of
Yeah,
Mexico
it's like
Center?
like right in the middle of Mexico, pretty much, in a little tiny town.
Okay.
In there. Yeah. So when I was 1, we got the opportunity to come here in Canada because my grandparents lived here. So my parents obviously took that opportunity, and then I've been coming here since I was 1 for every summer since the beginning of June till the end of October usually. So my whole summer's pretty much in Canada. So yeah, that's how we got introduced to the Canada world. We got to come here and work in the fields, make some money, and then move back to Mexico, and then went to school there and pretty much
Okay, so
lived there.
How many years did you do that?
Oh, from 1 to 12, so 11 years I did that. And then when I was 12, we decided to move here permanently. So, or to try to make a better life. So yeah, so I guess I would track back a little bit. When I was 11, almost 12, my dad passed away. So that was kind of like the big influence of why we moved here, because my dad hated Canada. So I don't think we would have ever moved if he would have still been alive. So it was pretty tragic. Probably the main or one of the big things in my life that kind of changed who I am and made me into who I am, I guess. And it's crazy to think because I was really young, but obviously I remembered everything really, really clearly. And I think it brought our family together, obviously a lot more. We were already really together, but we kind of had to sit down and think about what we were going to do as a family and where we were going to go from there, and my mom being alone and all that stuff.
Right.
So, did you have a question?
No, so you jumped into your dad there. I want to jump back a little bit further.
For sure.
So for somebody who, I grew up here in Canada, and so I know a lot of families who have done the Mexico-Canada thing.
Sure.
But I think for people listening, what's that like for you? Because from an outsider, like again, if you look at it from people who aren't familiar with our culture, even your family, they're kind of like, so you come up here for a couple of months to a different country, work, then go back. So what is that like? What is that like as an experience for a kid?
For sure. It's funny because it really depends who you ask. Because in Mexico, all my friends always thought, oh man, you get to go on holidays to Canada. Like, it's amazing. And like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody was so jealous. And like, we were known as like the rich kids in Mexico growing up, I guess, even though far from that. But they didn't get to see what we did here, right? They just got to see, oh, you get to like skip 1 month of school and then come here and then spend your whole entire summer in another country and then go back with a bunch of money and like nice clothes and whatever, right? But for us, it was a totally different thing. And even my husband says this, like growing up, my husband lived like pretty close to us. And he would be like, yeah, I would know that you guys would go and then you'd come back all like nice and stuff. So he thought I was like, not loaded, but he thought we were like pretty well off, right? And
so
then
just to be clear, did he still have this illusion when he married you? Is this like one of those where you're like, what? You're not what?
You lied to me. Surprise, school debt. No. No. So when we were dating, then he got to know a little bit more of what it was, but he didn't really get to experience until he came here the first summer, and then he was working in the fields, and he was like, you did this?
This is what you did?
This is what you did? Like, it was super. Yeah, so anyway, as a child, I loved it. Like, I think it, like, my dad was we've always talked about this. He was a totally different person when he was in Canada than in Mexico. Here, he was more of like a dad figure, I guess. He would sit with us, play with us. We would work together. So we got to experience that really closeness with him. And then in Mexico, he was kind of not as present. Like, he would be with his friends and, you know, drinking and stuff like that. But so we really enjoyed it. Like, it really brought us together. But I've had some comments, people saying like child labor, like that's super wrong of what we were doing. Because I was working, I was 7 years old, working all day, right? All day, like long hours. But I loved it. Like, I took on the challenge. I think I still hold a record for faster strawberry picker.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I actually think so.
We picked strawberries with you the one year. And I thought it was kind of cool. Like, you know, we could hang out. And, and then we talked for like a minute and then you were gone.
I know. I think I made my first $100 by myself when I was 7, just picking strawberries.
That was my first summer season in strawberries.
I know. So I remember the boss coming up to me and he couldn't believe it. Like, the owner of the strawberry field, he was just like, how is this little girl? Like, so he gave me like another $100 on top of that because he was like impressed. Yeah, he was like, I cannot believe it. Like, he was blown away. But to me, it was like, it was fun. Like, it was a challenge. Like, I got to go every day and then see if I could beat my own record and stuff. And not even knowing, I was obviously helping out a lot in my family, right? And we were all doing that. So, no, I would not change like a thing in my childhood. Like, it was hard work, but it was also one of my best memories probably with my family. Like, we were super tight and like, we're in the same boat pretty much, right? We all worked, went home, rested, and then went back. And then obviously that kind of gave me a whole other life in Mexico too, because we had money. So we were able to do things that other kids probably wouldn't, right?
I was going to say, so, because I don't know this that well, but does that make you a lot richer in Mexico? Like, is that the reason?
Oh, for sure. Like, people there, especially in my little town, they pretty much live day by day. Like, their dad works, their mom doesn't, but their dad only works like sometimes, odd jobs here and there. So they pretty much just scrape by. You like pretty much have to eat and that's it, right? With us, we obviously took a pretty big chunk of money and then we would go there and then spend those 8 months pretty much spending it, right? Well, we also put a lot into our house. We have a really, really big house in Mexico because every year we would take like a pretty big portion of that money and then keep building and building and building. So we have a pretty massive house down there, which that's another thing where people would be like, wow, like they're rich. They have a massive house. You know what I mean? But no, we pretty much, from what I understand, like I was pretty little, but I think we pretty much spent our whole money and then we would have to come back and start from scratch again. So we would spend that money that we made and then come back and then start over.
So here's a random question that I just thought of that I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but okay. So you grew up really poor. And so your work ethic, I'm assuming part of it came from that.
Oh, for sure. So
how do you now, not being poor anymore, and eventually I'm assuming you and Aldo are going to have little Yesis running around.
I hope so.
So how do you help the next generation? Because what I've seen and experienced, because I'm second generation here in Canada, my kids are third. I had to work a lot harder than my kids do already.
For sure.
And for a lot of my generation, we've struggled to find a way to instill that same work ethic into our kids. So now, since you're not a parent yet, you probably have better answers than when you're a parent. Because once you're a parent, then you're like, oh, that didn't work. But do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do you give your kids that same type of experience and work experience that you had because you're not poor, so you can't fully.
Yeah. We always talk about this. Actually, me and Aldo have had many conversations about this because he grew up way different than me too, right? Like he worked in the fields there, but nothing compared to what I did here. So I always joke around. I always say like, oh, my kids are going to pick cucumbers when they hit 6 years old. And he's like, wait, no, hold up. Like, I'm not going to do that to my kids. So we kind of talk about that a lot. But I think we just have to meet halfway, I guess, with parenting. I always say, like, even if we don't work the same long hours that we used to do, like at least, and maybe not from 6 years old. Maybe that's a little too young, but
7.
Yeah,
but yeah, no.
7, 8, maybe. No, like I always say to him, even if we like work until lunch, maybe even like I work with them so they know that I'm there. Because part of the reason why I loved it too is because I was with my family, right? So maybe he will take some time off in the summer so we can all do that as a family. And then I always say this too, like I will love for my kids to work and then for me to save that money that they make without them knowing. Yeah. And then by the time they hit college or need a car or something, then they can buy their own stuff with their own money. And then I can say, you know what, this is what you did. This is how you became. And then they kind of learn how to budget and stuff like that too. Right. But like you said, it probably changed when I'm a parent.
Well,
I don't know.
And what are you going to do if you have a child like Albert? So Albert didn't like the strawberry fields. It's a fictional character. This is not a real guy. Really hated. So it'll be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to watching this as years unfold.
To see how.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a bit late for me. I'll be a grandparent by then, but no, it's just interesting. I think I heard another statistic the other day. Somebody was saying, you know, even with building businesses, the first generation typically struggles. Second generation, it explodes. Like they carry it to the next level, and by the third or fourth generation, they typically kill the whole business.
Yeah, they spend it all. Right? I've heard that before, actually.
And so then when I'm listening to and I remember you as a kid that way. Like you were incredibly hardworking. You were an awesome employee. And so then you think, okay, so now how do you carry this on? Because you had underlying things that you can't fake poverty. And so you then telling your kids you have to work or else we're going to eat. And they're like, no, you're lying, Dad. So so let's go back. You mentioned the loss of your dad.
Yeah, for sure.
So what was that like? You obviously now when you talk about it, it's been a bunch of years.
For sure.
How did you guys navigate that? And how did that lead to you guys living up here?
Wow. It was extremely hard, obviously, as expected. The shock of like so all of a sudden, like we weren't expecting that at all. We had to kind of take a step back, like I said, trying to think of like, because we built this entire house over there, massive house, put pretty much all our money into it. And now it's sitting there alone pretty much, right? So we had to really think about it. My mom did not want to live there, obviously. So she was the priority in our, like, obviously my older siblings, I was little, so I didn't have a say in it, but she just like did not like that life that she lived down there. So she wanted to get away. She had all her family here. And so kind of that influenced that for sure. But I think we came back. We came back 1 year again, worked, and then went back. So the first year that he passed, we came back, worked for the summer, and then went back and then tried it to see if we were, stay there and then keep doing the back and forth thing. And then that's when Mom's like, nah, this is not going to work for me. So I need to be with my family, which is understandable. And that summer, we were coming back to work and then we were going to go back. She actually didn't tell us that we weren't going to go back. So
surprise!
Yeah, I know, right? And I was a teenager by that time. And I remember my teachers, like every year, my teachers would be like, oh, I'll see you next school term. Have a great time. I remember one of my teachers saying, like, my best wishes for you in life, blah, blah, blah. He gave me this huge speech and I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, wait, didn't your mom tell you? And I was like, what? You're not coming back. And I was like, what do you mean? So I remember me and my sister just storm in and I'm like, Mom, what is this? Like, what is this? We're not going back? She's like, oh yeah, I guess it's time for you to know. Like, we're staying in Canada. And we were pissed. And now looking back, now that I'm an adult, I can't imagine how hard that would have been for Mom. Like, right? So we were teenagers. We were not as bad as some teenagers, I guess. But
it's all relative. It depends who you compare yourselves to,
right?
True.
But it was very tough. I think it was very tough for her to know that we were moving our whole life, and we had a bunch of friends and stuff like that. So for us to complain all the time to her and be like, "This isn't fair," like life isn't fair, then I think that was a little bit unfair on our part, I guess. And And that came the next big struggle with immigration in our part.
Well, and this is where I want to get to because you have a couple different perspectives with immigration. So you have your own struggles, but then you're also dealing with a husband who is dealing with that, right? So let's work through that a little bit.
Yep.
I could see on your face you have a few things you wanted to say.
Oh gosh, yes.
So what is that process like? Because I don't think, and I'm going to say that I'm 100% sure that the average Canadian who has been here their whole life has no clue how difficult and how painful this process can be. So what's that been like?
So in the legal aspect of it, it's a nightmare. Like I didn't have to deal with that when I was little. I had to deal with it now with my husband. I did all his paperwork and everything. And honestly, his case was like piece of cake. Like it was pretty much guaranteed. Was very much in the air. Like we had to try. We went through 3 different lawyers. The first lawyer, he gave us so much hope. Like he was just like, this is easy. Your case is a walk in the park. Like I can do this with my eyes closed pretty much. We paid $15,000. He said he put our papers in because you have to like fill these things and then send them in, right? Yeah. He's like, your grandparents, like it's fine. They were here. So for a whole year, we were calling him. He's like, no. Like I'll let you know as soon as I hear back. Like your papers are in. So for a whole year, we waited and waited, nothing. Finally, he disappeared. Didn't hear back from him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we had to hire another lawyer. They called the offices and they're like, no, your papers aren't in. Like he never sent them. Like,
well, this is where I pause a little bit because what I've heard from a lot of people is like you can so easily get ripped off like this.
100%.
Because you don't know.
Exactly.
And so they really hold every advantage over you because they say, well, we can make you, and if you do say anything, they can make it so that you can't enter the country. Like there's a lot of power that's put on people here.
100%. And I feel like the more you do, the more you learn. Because by the third lawyer, I remember he was not giving us great odds. He was saying, this is going to be tough. Like we're going to work on it. And then we were like, we want you. Yeah. Because the more you hear like, this is easy, this is fine. Like, you know what I mean? The more sketchy it is, I guess, you'll have to really think about it. Like, is it really easy though? Because so the first lawyer disappeared. We lost the money, obviously. But the worst part was losing the time. Yeah. Because when your papers are in, they take up to they can take up to 3 years, right, for them to decide. So that whole year was lost. We had to start from scratch. And then, so the way it works, if you're in process of something, you're legally here. Like, if your papers are in, even if you extend your permission to stay or whatever, you're still legally here, even though you haven't heard back. That whole year we were here illegally and we didn't even know it. So if anything happened, which it did, the first year we were here on that winter, I think you remember, my mom and my brother got in an accident on our way to work. So that was huge too because we were here illegally. We had Mexican license. We didn't have insurance and it just it was a lot of money on top of that. So we lost a lot of money. And then that's another thing people don't really know either because if you get in an accident or if you injure yourself, if you go to the hospital, it's insanely expensive for people that don't have papers. Right. And you don't even think about it because obviously it's free here, right, for people. So my mom broke her arm. She needed surgery and it cost $13,000. Wow. I remember. And I remember I was little too, but it was like, what are we going to do? We still had, we lost those $15,000 and then we needed $13,000 for the operation. So it was, and I remember even being that little, me and my sister worrying about that, thinking what are we going to do? And it's funny because now I see kids here and obviously that's not something they worry about and they shouldn't. Right. But as immigration family, you always have to worry. I remember my dad always do not run, do not hurt yourself, do not, if you break your arm, if you break your leg, that was something a huge fear of us every time we were in Canada for those 4 months. We have to be extra careful not to get injured or get sick or anything like that because it would cost an arm and a leg. So that's
maybe literally if you couldn't afford it, right?
Exactly.
It's a terrible joke.
It is.
I'm very sorry. No,
it's true.
See, and the reason I want to talk to you about this was because when we talk about immigration, and the U.S. is a little more politicized this way than ours, but people are very callous with it because they have citizenship. Mm-hmm. And so they're very vocal in their rants. But I have a lot of family who've struggled. My aunt struggled like crazy to get her citizenship. Mm-hmm. I have family trying in the States who have tried for 10, 15 years. And so it is not as easy of a process as people make it out to be. We'll just do it the right way. Like you did it the right way and you were in here illegally a year, lost $15,000. Like, and there's a lot of that. This is not strange.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who get screwed over that way because it's an easy market for people to rip people off.
Yep.
And you're seeing this, you see it a lot in the States, especially with people smuggling people in. There's money, like there's a lot of money involved in this kind of stuff because you don't understand the value of your citizenship until you don't have it.
Exactly. And it's something you don't even think about, right? Because it's like, obviously, you're here. It's your rights. You were born here. But from someone that hasn't had it, it's like everything pretty much.
Right.
It's a huge blessing. So, the other major thing for us was school, obviously. And people probably don't know this either, but if you don't have a citizenship or a permanent residency, you can't go to school in Canada. It's way different in the States. You can go to school. You can go pretty much do anything. Here, you can't. So that first year was tough for us because we came from a bunch of friends. We were pretty popular in Mexico. We loved sports. We loved all the activities. And then coming here, winter, first of all, snow, awful.
Did you guys not have snow in Central Mexico?
No, we didn't.
Weird.
So yeah, that first year was awful. Like I remember my brother Eddie was still in Mexico. He was in university and he came to visit us that winter and he was laughing because he's like, I walked in and you guys all had massive cheeks. You guys were all fat, like all just inside eating. Like every single one of us.
It's cold,
like,
Eddie. It's cold, all right?
He's like, you look like chipmunks, everybody. But yeah, that's all we did. We stayed inside. We couldn't go to school. There was nothing to do outside, so we were pretty much in quarantine. So I guess we got prepared.
Quarantining before quarantine. It was cool.
That's why we survived.
And Mexican food is awesome, but not always healthy.
That's true. That's true.
I really do love Mexican food, though. But.
Yeah, so that was really tough. I remember, and my uncles really tried really hard for us to go in school. They were meeting with, principals, different school boards. We tried so many different things. So it was all up in the air and we were all like, ooh, are we going to go? Are we not going to go? And then finally they were like, no, like you have to. And I remember that first day back, like the first day of school, we were picking peppers. And I remember watching like the school bus and I was just bawling. Me and my sister were just crying and mom, I can't imagine what that was like for mom, right?
Right.
And I went home. I was like, I don't want to do anything. And it was really tough. And that's another thing you don't think about. Like when you're in school, you know what I mean? Like this is not a Canada problem. This is maybe like a third world country, right? People can't go to school. And when I was in college, I remember so many times I was so stressed out. And I'm like, oh, I hate school. And I had to take a seat and be like, I'm blessed. I need to really soak that in that I'm able to do this.
Right.
So that was probably the biggest challenge in my perspective. And probably I would probably speak for my sister as well because I think we struggled the same way of not going to school. But yeah, and then I think it was a year and a half we didn't go to school. And then finally somebody paid for us to go to a private school, which was huge. It
was a year and a half that you guys didn't go to school. I didn't know that. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
So I got put back a year. So Yeah, it was tough. And I still remember the day my aunt came and she was just like, hey, we got to go shopping. And I was like, for what? And school stuff, like backpacks. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, you're going to school tomorrow. And I was like, what? And I still don't know to this day who paid for us. It was, so whoever did, if you're listening, it meant the world to both of us. It was huge, huge, huge. And I remember that first week in school, we were sick, super sick. And I went to school. I did not want to miss one day. I went to school super sick, always coughing and stuff. And I remember one of the girls in my class, she was like, why aren't you home? If I was sick, I would stay home. You're crazy. And I remember thinking oh, no, I want to be here. And then we went to school for a week and then it was March break. And I was like, why? I was so mad that we had a week off and everybody was like, yes, March break. And I was like, no, I want to go to school. So that was a huge eye-opener for me.
Well, it's an interesting perspective from my end because we talked earlier about, the different generations. And I feel like a lot of Canada and the U.S. right now is in a generation where we just assume everybody has this.
Yeah.
The way we talk and the way we, treat our country is just like, well, yeah, no, there are so many places around the world that going to school every day.
It's a privilege, right?
Even, the opportunity when we went to Bolivia there and talked to Benny and Esther, the things that we take for granted up there are luxuries in other places of the world.
Yep.
But we're so used to it. And so listening to here, you start feeling really guilty because you're like, man, I always took that for granted. I never thought anything of it because every day, every year, I just went to school.
Yeah.
It didn't cross my mind that this wouldn't be an opportunity. So, man, that's crazy.
I know, right? Even I don't take it for granted, obviously, but even like I said, I have to take a step back and like remember, because it was quite a while ago, but then remember like, wow, like I need to be really grateful because I was able to graduate university, which is insane.
Right.
To go from here to here.
Well, you earn like $100 a year in strawberries, so I'm sure if your work ethic is like that, university was a breeze. Like
yeah, that I'm truly grateful for that. That I can honestly say that my work ethic, it's probably better than most people from.
Your humility isn't, but your work ethic is. That's good.
No, well, I grew up with a lot of white friends. I know. I know this.
Okay, so let's jump from there. Aldo's got his own set of challenges.
Yes.
So tell me a bit of Aldo's story.
Okay, so...
And this is with his permission, just so we're clear.
Oh, absolutely. I already
welcome to the Gossip Center here at the Peanut Gallery. Tell me what Aldo... No.
He said, if you don't cry, it's not real. So I guess I have to cry. I'm just kidding.
No, we're waiting now. Carry on.
I'll wait. No, for sure. So I've known Aldo. I'll give you a little backstory very quick. I've known Aldo my whole life. He doesn't remember me. I was little when I left. He was cool. 16. He's a lot older.
Remember him.
I remember him. Not in that way. I was little, but no, I met him back when I went for holidays at a dance, and then kind of put my eyes on him, and I knew he was gonna be my husband. Crazy to think that, because the challenges ahead, I didn't even think about it, and we were blessed. It went really smooth. Yeah. So we met that winter, and then I went back for my spring break to visit him, and then he came that summer following, and then he just never left. So that's the joke. He brought a teeny tiny little suitcase. Stay here. So yeah, we got engaged that October. So he came in April, got engaged in October, got married in November. So we got married through the courthouse first, and then started our life together. I think the biggest challenges, and I know for sure, so he was working as an engineer in Mexico. Right. Had a really good job, had a potential to grow in the company. He was moving up in the company. And then he just dropped everything. Just dropped all of that, came here. And obviously you can't work here if you don't have your papers. So navigating through that was really tough for him. And I could see it, because obviously he spent 5 years in school, getting good grades, graduating, and then started a job he loved. And then now he had to move here and then kind of start from scratch. Right. So that was really tough for him. I think it still is tough for him. But he adopted really well. So his mindset, he's doing really good in that aspect. So moving forward, we want to obviously get his transcript. And that's another thing that's really weird. And I've talked to a lot of people, because a lot of people from like India, for example, they've been doctors right down there, and then here they're driving taxis. It's insane to think that. Like, it's weird. Very strange.
What is the challenge with that? Is it just that the Canadian government won't accept their school degree, or like what's the challenge in getting that degree certified here? Yeah, for sure. So we've been looking a little bit into it. We didn't dive too much into it until he had his papers, but yeah, you need to it depends on what career you chose. Some careers, they just totally won't even acknowledge it. Some of them, you need to go to school for like another 2 to 3 years to kind of just, to just reevaluate his schooling, I guess. Some careers, you can actually get a job through, like, it depends on your boss. If they're okay with you, they can be like, okay, that's fine. I can still hire you and then do that. But it's very rare that happens for somebody to be like, you know what, I'm just going to acknowledge your schooling. Right. So, or in some companies can actually send you to school and pay for it for you if you're actually that valuable of a career, I guess. But in Aldo's case, he'll definitely have to go to school for a little bit to reevaluate. So that's kind of, it's tough because, like I said, it was 5 years, right? It was 5 years of hard education. He has 0 school debt because he really hustled for that, and then not to come here. And even his parents have a hard time with it. I remember talking to his dad, and he's just like, it just breaks my heart to like had to see him go through all of that, and we were cheering him on. Finally got an amazing job, and then had to just like start. And then the tricky thing with that too is that if you stop working in that field, so many things change, right? Because it just keeps evolving.
And then, because I've talked to him about it sometimes when he's pretty low. I'm like, oh, you want to go to Mexico? We can try it there. Like, I'm fine with that. And then he'd be like, no, but even if I go there, like, I'm way behind now. It's been 3 years, so it's tough either way. He's gonna either have to go to school here or probably have to go to school there again a little bit.
So my question would be, just listening as you're describing that, I mean, 5 years intense education, lots of expense involved, lots of his heart and soul put into it.
For sure.
I mean, he dedicated his time to becoming that. When you guys look at the system coming to Canada and like, okay, so he can't practice engineering here. I wonder in my head, how much of that is just because we don't want to accept that education, even though it could be on par with what we're doing here, because we want to keep it to ourselves, so to speak. Like, it's almost like we're protecting what we think is the correct thing. And I mean, he could be working down there and engineering incredible things and doing amazing work, and it's all perfectly fine, and nothing's ever going to happen, and it's great, and it's on par with what we're doing here. But because whoever controls the yes and the no of what's allowed and what isn't looks at that and goes, no, he'll have to do his schooling here because they want the financial resources that he's going to bring. So like, yeah, it's going to cost you another $40,000 to do your school, or $50,000, because we want that paycheck, instead of it just being, an easy certification of someone who's got incredible talent. Like, do you guys look at that and go like, it's unfair? Like, would Aldo say that his education is comparable to what is here, and that it's just like he's up against a system that's not working, like not benefiting those that could be a benefit to our culture and our society?
I didn't even think about that before. Actually, the whole paycheck thing, it makes sense. It probably has to do with that a little bit, if not, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it is a little bit frustrating to him to know, because I know a lot of times we like drive by buildings that they're building and stuff like that, and he'll talk about like, oh, this is how you do this is how you do that. So obviously he has that knowledge still. So I think it must be frustrating to him to know. And the other frustrating part is that there's so much job around here in this area. Like we've Googled it. I've done my research too to know like what the possibilities are, and there is a ton of job. People are like hiring left and right and need people, right? So it's a little bit frustrating, like you said, to know that he went through all that schooling and yet he still
I think the challenge becomes then, now when we hear you talk about Aldo, he worked hard, the schooling was good. The challenge becomes, how do you evaluate worldwide universities?
Yeah.
So how do you go to India and all these other places? Because we're facing a trade shortage. So the short answer would be, it'd be awesome if you could just work.
Mm-hmm.
But we also live in a society that sues everybody and their grandma for everything. So if you hire somebody with not, it's I get the challenge. I just think it's good for us to get a perspective of how challenging this is for you. Yeah. So I understand, as a Canadian who's been here most of my life, we want to have, if somebody's going to come in and they're going to run a program, whatever they're going to be, I want them to be certified.
Yep.
But most of us can say that very easily without ever, talking to anyone else. And hearing your challenge. One of my hopes coming out of this, Yesi, and I don't know if you have any other stuff. We're at 33 minutes. So we're basically done.
Yep.
But my hope is that people will maybe at least soften up when they talk about immigration.
Yeah. Oh.
And understanding like the challenge that this is.
For sure.
When you're up here and you've lived here and all these privileges, understanding for the people trying to get into a country like this, trying to get a place. And even for the, there's a lot of judgment for the families that come here for the summer.
Oh, for sure.
I know that for a fact. And some of them, I'm sure it is. Some of them, I'm sure it's just sheer child labor. And we know some of this. But there are a lot of families who are just like yours, who this gives their family the opportunity to live.
Mm-hmm.
This gives you guys the opportunity to pay bills and to, get ahead in life.
For sure.
And so, thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Thanks for telling us your story. And thanks for being awesome. You are a huge asset to this community and to this church community. Your family has been. And you've brought a lot of life into it. And so, our hope for Aldo is that he can get through this and get back into that career, because 40 hours a week at a job you don't love is 40 hours too many.
Yes, for sure.
Right. And so you understand that. But anyways,
absolutely.
With that, we're out of time.
Awesome.
It has been awesome. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time. I'm supposed to say like, comment, subscribe, do all those kind of things to see more awesomeness like Yesi.
Awesome.
All right. Done. Bye.
Done.